people started on our latest work on no red ink. So this is basically me giving you the lesson and then working through a few practice exercises. So this is on identifying dependent and independent clauses. And you can see we've got 4 sections. Is the thought complete or incomplete? Identifying dependent clauses, identifying independent clauses, and then the checkpoint, kind of putting that all together. So let's start at the beginning with the first lesson. So this is a part that it's really important to pay attention to if you're not quite sure how to go about this. So this is all about recognizing whether a piece of writing is a complete thought, which is really important, not just as a reader, but really for improving our writing. So to put it very simply, complete thoughts express a full idea. Incomplete thoughts can attach to complete thoughts to form a sentence. All right, so like for example, we see that because there, so we know that this sentence has a SWABI or a subordinate clause. So my neighbor lent me his PlayStation because I helped him mow the lawn. That's not a complete thought, honestly, because of that SWABI, because of this subordinate conjunction. Sorry, I misspoke. I said subordinate clause. So because of that conjunction, this is not a complete thought. However, I could say, before I move on with this, if you just got rid of the because, it would be 2 complete thoughts, right? My neighbor lent me his PlayStation. I helped him mow the lawn. Those are 2 complete thoughts. But once you've got like a little like conjunction like that on there, that makes it not a complete thought. It has to function in conjunction with another thought, another clause. So if you're struggling to tell if something is a complete or incomplete thought, try reading it out loud. So sometimes you might just be able to hear it, right? It's raining. I'm cold. Are you hungry? All complete thoughts. Jumping up and down, spinning in circles. On the radio with a loud voice, right? Those are not complete thoughts because they don't have all the parts of a complete thought: subject, verb, object. All right, and this is just kind of repeating that stuff. So let's just give it a try. Oh, it's not going to let me practice because I already tested out. So let's do the quiz me. All right. Is the highlighted portion of the sentence a complete or incomplete thought? Writing Lois Lowry's new jet ski. That's the author of The Giver. That's funny. So, what do you think? This is an incomplete thought. And why? Because it doesn't have all the parts that make a thought complete: a subject, a verb, and then an object. So, like, who is writing Lois Lowry's new jet ski? Or what about that? So, that's an incomplete thought. Rachel bought a magic wand. That's a complete thought. It functions on its own. Rachel's the subject. What's the action? What's the verb? Bought. What did Rachel buy? A magic wand. There we go. So then this is the object of the sentence with a little adjectival information saying what kind of wand? A magic wand. That's a complete thought. All right. Is the highlighted portion Zendaya hid behind the potted plant, laughing hysterically? Yeah, because we've got a subject, a verb, and then we've got an object or information about, what's going on in this. Complete thought. Annoyed by the spelling mistakes in the article, this is an incomplete thought because there's no subject. You have to wait for the whole second section to know really what's going on. Okay, so that's a little bit of this one. I'm going to exit the preview and then I'm going to go back in again. You can see this is the assignment. So let's preview identifying independent clauses. Let's see if the lesson's any different. Dependent clauses, right? So a dependent clause adds information to an independent one. It cannot stand alone. Right? Like that she found at the zoo. So you can see there's, in a sense, there is a subject, there's a verb and an object, but because of that it isn't complete on its own. again, it's just telling you kind of like listen for it. So a dependent clause is something that's almost like a complete thought, but because of, say, like it says here, a subordinating conjunction or something like that, that's what makes it dependent on some more information, right? That's what makes this sentence a little bit more complex, not just compound, but complex, because one of these thoughts relies on information that comes from an additional thought, right? Like after we went to the school dance, Lucy and I went out for ice cream, okay? So again, this is really building on and kind of reviewing what we were working on with the SWABIs. So let's look at a few examples. Highlight all the words that make up the dependent clause below. So part of this is just building this understanding of what these things are called, so that then maybe someday if you're working on a cool narrative, just like for fun, you want to get it published, we could talk about that writing and say, okay, this dependent clause is standing alone. This isn't a complete sentence. You get the idea. All right. So what's the dependent clause? Let's see. Rachel bought souvenir keychains for all her friends. That's an independent clause. That could be its own sentence. So this is the dependent clause while she was on vacation. And we can tell because look, it is. Look there. There's a SWABI. All right. How about this one? Sideshow Mel joined a band that he saw perform on TV. We see a SWABI, one of those subordinate conjunctions, so we know there's a dependent clause. Dependent clause while she toured the college campus. Sideshow Bob started working for a reality show, which I watch every week, that I had shined for hours. Right? So pretty much it's whatever that is following one of those conjunction type words. That's information, a thought that in a different context could be its own complete thought, could be its own sentence, but because this kind of word sets up a relationship between ideas, it makes it a dependent clause. All right, let's exit that preview again. And let's look at just the final bit. Let's look at this part where it puts it all together. Just as always, when you get to the checkpoint in any of these no writing rounds of practice, it's super important to read the direction before you look at the sentence and just start clicking things and submitting the answer. I've noticed that a lot of times when students get frustrated because it keeps making you do more of these exercises, oftentimes the problem is that you're not reading closely to the directions, paying close attention, especially with these checkpoints, because the directions will keep changing. It wants to test you in different ways to really stretch your mind and stretch your understanding. So highlight all the words that make up the independent clause. All right, independent, not dependent. So Allie keeps her diary inside her sock drawer. That's just a sentence. So sometimes a sentence is an independent clause is a sentence. But if a sentence is a little bit more complicated like this one, only one part of it will be an independent clause. Before we start bowling, Sarah Wright needs to set up the bumpers. I need to set up the bumpers. And that's an independent clause. Okay, now let's see. It says highlight all the words that make up the dependent clause. J. Cole plans to do a backflip when he gets his diploma. Hey, there's a SWABI, so that's your dependent clause. Let's see. That he hoped would prove chocolate ice cream to be the best flavor. Dependent clause. Dependent. So I'm looking for the kind of word that makes it so that a sentence can't stand alone, because Chief Wiggum promised pizza parties for his classmates. Independent. All right, see, it actually sometimes flashes when the directions change. So look for that, and then you'll know, I should be highlighting a different kind of thing than the last problem. Lord Farquaad orders a waffle with extra whipped cream whenever he goes out for breakfast. But this is the independent clause, so I'm not doing this part. I'm doing the part that could stand alone. Lord Farquaad orders a waffle with extra whipped cream. Okay, I think this is enough practice, so hopefully this helps you to master identifying dependent and independent clauses.